Hi, my name is Willow Huffman, and today I'm going to be going over my prompt 2 for the seminar course. For this prompt, I am focusing on a math standard over measurement and what I use to differentiate and help students in the classroom and make this lesson more engaging for students. So here I have kind of my reading review, my reflection over the reading. Teachers should be ever learning and working to improve their techniques. That's what I believe. The most influential way to do this is through reflexive practices. The complexity of teaching requires teachers to question their practices for their own professional development in order to improve and to increase learner performance. Without it, we would never change how we teach, and in turn, our students would not be as successful as they could be. It is our job not only to work to improve our students' skills, but our own as well. I really believe in this standard, and since it was my first year teaching, I took all the feedback that I could get. I know nobody's perfect their first year teaching, let alone 5 years into their teaching career, but I wanted to make sure that I had multiple people in my room observing me, telling me what I could do better. And thankfully, I had a great mentor this year to help me improve on my lessons and my classroom management. So one way this plays a part in my teaching is also through collaborative book studies. At the beginning of the year, we are given the option to choose from 3 educational books to work on through as a group. The idea is to pick a book that discusses something that you struggle with. So I have recognized that reading is one of my weaker areas, so I always am sure to sign up for teaching reading strategy type books to continue to improve on this. The groups work together, we meet and discuss on what we have read and how we can utilize it and change it in our classrooms. Our school also utilizes peer experts by having certain teams throughout the school lead professional development on particular topics. We currently have a whole brain teaching team, and a writing committee. They present information on their topic and teach the rest of us a skill to focus on from that strategy each month. If we are unsure how it works, we are welcome to coordinate to observe one of the experts from this team demonstrate it within their own class. We are also able to have them come to our classes and observe how well we are able to implement the strategy and receive feedback. Within our individual grade levels, we utilize collaborative planning. There is a lot of discussion from week to week on what each of us did, what worked, what didn't, and how we can improve it for the next week or even for the next year. My prior knowledge and experience as a student greatly impact how I teach. The more I teach and learn about the standards, the better I'm able to help my students understand them. My experience as a student, both previously and now, help guide me on how I treat my students and what to expect from them. I remember finding myself dreading the creative assignments or struggling to not talk all day. So I use that knowledge to help give my students breaks and make sure that the work is as differentiated as possible to get to accommodate different types of learners. So here is my pre-lesson. This was my first year teaching in a second grade classroom. The lesson took place in the middle of the year, kind of towards the end, not towards the end, sorry, in the middle of the year, likely during like the second semester. The goal was for students to apply their knowledge of measurement by building their own jumping ramp and testing how far their car could travel. To complete these activities, students had to understand how to measure distance from the ramp to the car where it landed. They also had to identify what adjustments that they could make to the ramp, such as height or angle, to change how far the car could go. So before we begin this lesson, we spent a week learning about measurement and how to choose the correct tool for measuring different items and different distances. During that time, many students did struggle to decide what measuring tool to use. They often mix up the units like inches, feet, centimeters, and meters. I planned this lesson to specifically help strengthen and reinforce those measurement skills in a hands-on and meaningful way. The needs of diverse learners were met through the use of small groups and providing more teacher support with the assignments. The My Path lessons within the learning centers were automatically differentiated for each student. As far as strategies being used, learning centers are one of the only things that we utilize in this lesson. This seems to be one of the weaknesses of the lesson and something that needed to be revised. There is also no other content being utilized. The lesson was very cut and dry in presenting information, requiring students to demonstrate using worksheets and stations. The students were not very engaged to do this, and it seemed they lacked some background knowledge of measurement to help them categorize it using the new skill. I would incorporate more group stations on measurement and another introduction on what measurement is. I believe making all the stations focus on measurement will help solidify measurement for the students. So my revised lesson will be the stations focusing mainly on measurement, only on measurement, because that is such a standard that the students struggle with, especially with engagement. So using this activity to help with encouraging engagement and keeping the students engaged, I'm sorry, I just repeated myself. Using this lesson to help with engagement was something that I really wanted to use because I knew the students would have fun building the ramps and designing and working with groups. I also knew that the information would click better because it was a fun activity. So here is the standard and the substandards along with our learning target. Here was the pre-lesson. Up here, as you can see, it's a lot of information to jam and to mush into a student's brain over a few days. Students become overwhelmed. It's a lot to comprehend, and they're still struggling with measurement. So I feel like throwing all of this information on made it a little bit difficult for them to, will make it a little bit more difficult for students to grasp on the units of measurement, what measurement is, how we would measure, what we would use, you know? Here are my stations. So the first station, it was teacher table, and it worked with groups on their ramps, recording jumps, and reflection in math journals. So that was one station per day that the teacher was focusing on. I felt like that wasn't something that the students would enjoy. The other stations, they'd be worried about their ramp, they'd be too focused on the other ramps being built that they wouldn't complete their work. So I feel like that was a huge distraction to just have the teacher table focusing on one group at a time every day. Yes, the groups that we have were kind of touching back on standards that we already touched on, but again, I feel like it wasn't helping with students if they were just focusing on one ramp at a time. So here was my revision. I have my lesson. I made it a little shorter, just the one slide, because again, there was a lot of information on the last few slides that kind of jumbled together for the students. Another introduction to measurement, because after the weekend, you know, it's better to reintroduce something again and again and again to help with students retaining that information. I also have my teacher table. So, teacher table, work with groups on their ramps, drawings, and how they will measure their jumps. So, on this, we focused on drawing in their journals, their practice drawings, what they would use to measure, what they would use to build, where they would build it in the room, how big do they think they're going to build it, how far did they think their car might go against their building. So, we focused on that. So, I spent the day meeting with each group to focus on their building of their ramp, how they would measure their jumps, their drawings, kind of an introduction to answering the questions until we got to whole group. The next group focused on measurements. It was the wacky measurements. Students will practice their measurements before building their ramp. So I really wanted them to practice measuring before their ramp was built and they measured their jumps. So to reinforce how they would measure, that was what this was focusing on. Then they would get to ramp building. So remember, these stations, we usually focus on a station pretty much like a day. We don't want to have each station rotating. I don't want to rotate every 15 minutes. I feel like that doesn't give the students time to spend the time with you. It's a rushed group. They're not spending that good one-on-one time with you. Even if it's just 4 students, spending a good 15, 20, 25 minutes with them one-on-one really helps build relationships, confidence, and it helps them with what they're working on. So we have the ramp building. Students, one group at a time, will build their ramp and answer the questions on the recording sheet. So this is me saying one group at a time, but they will build it and they will leave it there. They will continue to work on the other stations. The next group will rotate, build their ramp, leave it there. And then that way, once all the ramps are built, once we've gone through all of the stations, each group is going to have the ability to go on and start letting their card go down the ramp, seeing what they could do. My room was big enough. I had enough groups to where each group had a part in the room where they could build their ramp. So yes, it did take a couple of days, but I made sure that each student had their time to build their ramps, to plan their ramps, and I felt like that was a very engaging and fun activity. The next one is on Google Classroom. There are questions that they will answer in their math journal, and I will show you what questions that they are going to answer in their math journal. And then on Splash Learn, there was assignments on measurement. So this was the differentiated assignment. So these questions that they're getting asked on this app, it differentiates to what they know. So if a student is struggling with measurement, it's going to give them easier questions to kind of help build up that measurement knowledge. If a student is excelling in measurement, it's going to give them a little bit harder questions. You know, I can assign something harder versus something easier for specific students. So if a student needs more help, I assign more measurement activities. If a student doesn't need as much help, I assign different activities that meets all the needs of all the students in the classroom. Here we have the artifacts from the classroom. So we have the paper that the students were working on, their estimate distance in feet, distance in inches, which is also explained in my videos. We have a sum of all distances, total feet, total inches, differences in length between the longest and the shortest differences, and what strategies did you use to estimate the difference. So we talked about these two papers in my teacher demonstration. The students worked on trials 1 and 2 with me, and then they completed their own trials 3, 4, and 5 in their own on their own ramp. The news, this was the introduction to it. And then we have the evidence of student success. So this was the questions that they answered in their journal. And yes, that was a rotation station. I like to keep everything up so the students know that that's what we're doing pretty much every day. So obviously we couldn't answer the questions until everybody started measuring. So as soon as everybody was done measuring, all ramps were done, all the questions were answers on the trial. I had them open up their journals and they answer the questions. My thing too is I like to let students see it before they do it, giving them the opportunity to look at the questions and read them before they do their trials, I think really helps students and what they're looking for. So in texting the lesson, I am in a second grade classroom, so I'm adapting this lesson better to meet the new this. Ooh, I'm so sorry. Let me try that again. I am now in a second grade classroom, so I'm adapting this lesson to better meet students' current needs and prepare them for more complex measurement categories for when they reach a third grade standard. My focus is to build students' background knowledge of measurement and strengthen the academic language so they can feel more confident using the correct terms and tools. To revise this lesson, I'm incorporating more centers and hands-on activities related to measurement. These stations will reinforce academic vocabulary, how to measure accurately, and how to choose the appropriate measuring tool for different distances and objects. Students will practice measuring lengths and distance more intentionally with clear opportunities to apply what they learn. Because there are many different stations, students will stay engaged and benefit from the hands-on learning environment, especially those who learn best with visuals and real materials. Students will use tools such as rulers, yardsticks, student journals, items from their ramps, and cars to test and record their results. Finally, the variety of their centers supports all learners by offering options to move around the room and work at different levels, ensuring that each student can participate successfully. Here, and I will link this in my page, is just a link to the Godot slides, which was this whole lesson and how we are supposed to be going over it. Right here, now I cannot record on Loom anymore. It does not let me. So this is a recording on Canva, but I do have a breakdown of all of these videos on a Loom recording that only allows me to go 5 minutes. So I have a breakdown of all of these videos on my webpage as well. And it talks about what all these videos have. So obviously the first 2 videos are whole group instruction of this activity. Video 3 is that teacher demonstration where I explain it. We do 2 trials together on a ramp that I built. We talk about how I measure it. We talk about what measurements I should use. We also talk about breaking the inches into feet. So I think at one part in the video, it was 52 inches that my car had jumped. I gave them a little bit of time to work together in their group to figure out how many feet is in 52 inches. And then video 4 and 5 focuses on the teacher table. This is where I met with one group and we drew their design in their journal. We talked about what units of measurement that they would be using. We talked about the units of measurement, inches, feet, meters, and centimeters. And we talked about what sources that they would be using for the materials in the classroom that they would be using to build their ramp. So that's kind of just a video analysis of what these videos talk about. After the lesson, I did make a few changes to reinforce measurement throughout all rotations so my students can mainly focus on that skill. I usually include a group that focuses on another math standard to ensure that we revisit all standards over time, but measurement was a very difficult concept for students, my students to grasp, that I wanted to make sure that I gave that standard consistent attention during that time. I think the small group time with me helped a lot as well. Students got the opportunity to work directly with me while building their designs and figuring out which measurement tools to use. Having that hands-on support made it easier for them to understand the process and apply the measurements more confidently. Here I talk about my graduate experience. So there are two specific graduate courses that have helped me become a better teacher, including the planning of this lesson. The first is the Young Child Home and Community course. This course helped me understand the important role that families, communities, and schools play in a child's development and education. As an educator, it taught me the value of building a strong relationship with my families and with families and students, and recognizing the unique experience and backgrounds that students bring to the classroom. The course also increased my awareness of how factors outside of school, such as family involvement, community resources, and life experiences, can impact student learning and behavior. Because I teach second grade, this knowledge has helped me become more intentional about partnering with families, supporting my students' social and emotional needs, and creating a classroom environment that is welcoming and inclusive for all children. So, my biggest focus in my classroom, one of the things that I focus on a lot is making sure that I'm building a relationship with all my students, no matter what. I want to make sure that they all feel welcome. I want to make sure that they all feel safe. So this class really helped kind of help me better understand how to do that. The second course that helped me the most was the Curriculum Trends and Issues course. This course helped me better understand how curriculum is developed, evaluated, and revised to meet the needs of diverse learners. As an educator, it taught me the importance of aligning instruction, assessment, and standards to support student learning. The course also increased my awareness of current educational issues and trends that decision making in schools. Because I teach second grade, understanding curriculum design helps me create a meaningful learning experiences, evaluate the effectiveness of instructional materials, and make informed decisions that support my students' academic growth. Additionally, the course emphasized the importance of meeting the needs of all learners, including English learners and students with diverse backgrounds, which has strengthened my ability to provide equitable instruction in my classroom. Both of these courses together, which is something that's a huge focus on in the school, is differentiation. So these both helped me understand differentiation. How can I not inc- increase, sorry, there it is, increase differentiation in the classroom? So there are obviously little things that I focus on when it comes to increasing differentiation, but these courses help me realize that there are other little things that helps increase that in the classroom, making sure that I'm meeting the diverse needs of all of my students in the room. Here I have my Works Cited page, and that is all for today. Thank you so much for listening.